The fiery, six-winged seraphim, an investigation into possibility. Across civilizations, across millennia, and across radically different worldviews, humanity has returned again and again to the same unsettling image: beings of fire, wings, and unbearable holiness. Among these, none are described with greater intensity or greater restraint than the seraphim. They appear briefly in ancient scripture, almost in passing, yet their description is precise, vivid, and strangely resistant to metaphor. 6 wings, fire, proximity to a divine throne, voices capable of shaking the foundations of reality. The question that remains is not merely theological, but investigative: were the seraphim symbolic constructs of ancient imagination, or records of something witnessed, interpreted, and preserved? The earliest detailed reference to seraphim emerges from prophetic literature, presented not as poetry or parable, but as testimony. The observer does not describe dreams or visions in vague language. Instead, the account is structured like a report. Location, posture, behavior, sound, and physical interaction are all documented. The seraphim are not humanoid messengers. They do not resemble later artistic angels. They are defined by function and form, burning beings whose wings serve specific purposes. To conceal the face, to conceal the lower form, to enable motion. This specificity raises an important question: why would a symbolic figure require anatomical precision? Ancient symbolic imagery is usually exaggerated, abstract, or inconsistent. The seraphim are not. One of the most perplexing aspects of seraphim accounts is the repeated emphasis on fire that burns without consuming. This is not natural fire as understood by ancient or modern physics. It does not behave destructively. Instead, it refines, purifies, and transforms. From a modern investigative perspective, this introduces several possibilities: a misunderstood energy phenomenon, a non-combustive radiant force interpreted through religious language, or a consciousness-based interaction beyond physical fire altogether. In each case, the witness struggles to describe an experience that exceeds available vocabulary. Fire becomes the closest approximation, not because it destroys, but because it overwhelms. The 6 wings of the seraphim are often treated as decorative in later art, but the original descriptions assign them roles. Covering the face suggests protection from something too intense to behold. Covering the feet implies humility or shielding from exposure. Flight implies mobility within a realm not bound by physical space. This functional breakdown mirrors how observers describe unfamiliar technology or phenomena, by assigning purpose to visible components. Much like early witnesses describing aircraft as metal birds, the seraphim's wings may represent perceived mechanisms rather than literal feathers. If so, the seraphim were not imagined as beautiful, they were overwhelming. Skeptics often attribute seraphim encounters to altered mental states, stress, trauma, or religious ecstasy. Yet this explanation encounters problems. Hallucinations tend to be chaotic, inconsistent, and deeply personal. The seraphim encounter follows a structured sequence: environmental shift, appearance of beings, vocalization, physical interaction, aftereffect, transformation, clarity, mission. Moreover, the experience does not inflate the witness's ego. Instead, it produces humility, fear, and reluctance, responses inconsistent with self-generated fantasies of power or importance. If this was imagination, it was imagination that diminished the self rather than exalted it. While the seraphim are uniquely named in one tradition, parallel figures appear elsewhere: fire-bearing guardians near divine realms, winged beings associated with purity rather than warfare, radiant entities whose presence induces fear, silence, or awe. These similarities do not prove shared origin, but they suggest a shared human response to encounters with something perceived as other, structured, and authoritative. When unrelated cultures independently describe fire, wings, elevation, and overwhelming presence, investigators must consider whether these elements reflect a common stimulus rather than coincidence. If seraphim exist, why are encounters so scarce? The accounts themselves provide a possible answer. Seraphim are not messengers to humanity. They do not roam the world. They remain fixed near the source of holiness itself. Contact occurs only when humans are drawn upward, not when seraphim descend. This would explain the absence of ongoing reports. These beings are not visitors. They are constants, encountered only at thresholds where human experience briefly intersects with something beyond it. 3 dominant interpretations remain. Symbolic: the seraphim represent abstract holiness, encoded as imagery. Psychological: the seraphim are internal experiences shaped by cultural expectation. Phenomenological: the seraphim are remembered encounters with a reality not fully accessible to human perception. None can be conclusively proven. Yet the persistence, structure, and restraint of the accounts argue against pure invention. These descriptions do not seek to explain everything. They do not embellish. They leave questions unanswered, and that, investigators note, is often a hallmark of genuine testimony. The enduring question, whether the seraphim are beings of fire, manifestations of consciousness, or guardians of a boundary humanity was never meant to cross, their role remains consistent. They stand at the edge of the infinite. They do not speak to comfort. They do not explain. They burn. They sing. They remain. And perhaps the most unsettling possibility is not that the seraphim never existed, but that they still do, unchanged, unseen, continuing their vigil while humanity debates whether the fire was ever real at all. Tales of the World is your gateway to the most fascinating stories ever told. From ancient myths and forgotten legends to eerie folklore and unexplained mysteries, we travel across cultures and centuries to uncover the tales that shaped humanity. Mythology from every corner of the world, chilling folklore and ghost stories, legends, curses, and lost civilizations, unexplained phenomena and dark history. New stories every week. Subscribe and journey beyond the known world.